Someone asked me, what are some of the worst injuries I've ever received in wrestling? You know, for a long time in wrestling, I was pretty lucky. I would say I didn't have a lot of injuries early on, but after a certain point in my career, that's when, you know, I started getting injured more frequently. And I think that there's several reasons for that. It's a combination, you know, a compound interest, I guess, built up over time. But one of the worst injuries is actually probably not what you guys would expect. One of the worst injuries, I think, was also one of the most gnarly injuries that I had. I have a notification here. I'm going to swipe that out. It was getting my skin steamed off while doing a live taping at ROH. This was a day that I think, you know, management was really putting me to the test to see what I was made of and what I could and couldn't handle. So for some context, on that show, I was wrestling, I think, a pre-show match. I don't remember if it was a singles or a multi-person match, but I had a match. And then I had, I believe, 2 or 3 valet spots on that show in different matches. And I also had to cut a promo for live TV. I think that was with Diesel. I want to say, because I was filling in for somebody who wasn't there, and so they were really trying to test me to see what my skill level was and what I could and couldn't handle. So I had a lot to do on that show, starting with pre-show and going throughout. It was a television taping where they would film, I believe, 4 episodes in one night. So it was a lot for fans as well as for the talent. And I had a dress that was a little bit wrinkled, and I had this arrangement with Stokely Hathaway, believe it or not, and he always had like a portable steamer, and I would let other people use my things in exchange for me being able to use theirs. So, you know, I had double-sided tape for the girls. I had, you know, sewing kits and scissors and first aid kits and things like that. So a lot of times, you know, I would be able to help people out and they would be able to help me out. And one of the ways Stokely helped me out was allowing me to use his portable steamer. Well, my favorite ROH dress that I had bought for my gimmick was this floor-length dress that had dragon scales coming down one side. It had short sleeves and it was like a deep plunging V neckline. And I just absolutely loved the dragon scales. It was so gothic. I was like a gothic Jessica Rabbit. It was amazing. I felt so epic in that dress. I really did. I felt like such a star, you know, that really jumped out because no one was really wearing those sorts of things at that time. I felt like I was definitely ahead of the curve. Well, I always, like I said, I tried to have a certain level of excellence and I never tried to do anything half-assed, and the dress was very wrinkly and I needed to go out for that promo segment. You know, within a few minutes, you know, everything was timed. Like I said, it was, you know, 4 television tapings. You got to go. There's not a lot of wasted time. And, you know, I knew this was a big night for me and this was a proving ground. And so I'd asked another girl on the roster, hey, you know, I have Stokely's clothes steamer. Can you please help me steam out my dress? And so I was holding the fabric of my dress away from my body. It was near my legs. And the girl kept pressing it closer and closer and closer and closer to my skin until she touched it to my skin. And I yelled. It was so awful and painful. And like a bunch of people in the locker room just turned and looked. And I was backstage near Gorilla when this was happening. And she steamed my skin off. And in case you don't know, a steam burn is actually way more intense and harmful than a fire burn, because steam is actually hotter than fire, believe it or not. And so several layers of my skin melted off. It was like House of Wax. Like it was like a horror movie happening in real time. And I watched my skin bubble and drip from my body, legit like a horror movie. And I saw like the rest of my skin kind of like shriveling up as it got like the byproduct of the rest of my skin, like literally dripping off of my body like sweat, but it was my skin. And the rest of it was like shriveling up like the Wicked Witch of the West when the house falls on her and her legs shrivel up underneath the house. That was what was happening to my skin. And they didn't have a real, at the time, they didn't have a real medical crew at that venue. I believe this was in Philly. This is at the ECW Arena. And I had to go out and cut a promo for Diesel, with Diesel, and I don't remember if Dijak was ringside as well, but I know it was just at least one of us or the 2 of us together on that particular segment on the show. And while I'm cutting my promo, there's literally skin dripping off and like shriveling, and you could pull like my skin off like a snake. and my dress had become stuck to my body. And so after I got done with that segment, I went backstage. I had to literally rip my dress from the side of my leg, and the wound was about that big because it was the exact mouth size of the clothes steamer. And I had to perform the whole rest of the night like that. And that's why for the next several months, any indie booking I did where I was wrestling and you saw me in my gear, there was a big bandage. And that's because I had to have like a nickel alloy, something or other that you put on steam burns, because several layers of my skin were gone. I remember WWR had footage of me with that bandage. Ring of Honor did. Queens of Combat did. I think WrestleCade. So yeah, that wound took a very, very long time to heal. And ironically, it did not leave a scar. I was expecting a huge scar, but that took a very, very long time to heal. And that was just so gnarly, guys. I know that's a really long story, but I really wanted to put that into context for you guys. That was one of the worst injuries. It hurt so badly. I remember trying to explain that to a doctor when I had to pay out of pocket and go see a specialist for that. It was so awful and it was so embarrassing. It was so ugly and it hurt so bad to try to like wash that on the out. It was on the outer part of my hip. It was so bad. But yeah, like I said, like I always try to just do my job, you know. And so when I went out there to do my promos and all of my valet spots, I believe I had like 4 different things on that night. Nobody would have known that, you know, my skin had literally melted off backstage, and there wasn't a real medical crew, so they didn't have like the right type of chemicals to put on that. And like the bandage didn't fit. That's how my dress got stuck to my leg, because they didn't have the right kind of bandages. Like, it was bad. It was bad. And then that same person actually fractured my ankle in a match a couple years later. So, yeah, that was also really, really gnarly. Another injury was having my knee dislocated, and it moved around to the back of my leg. I was wrestling, ironically, at Ring of Honor. It was my first go at Ring of Honor back in like 2009, 2010, around the same time that Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly were coming in. I was coming in around the same time as them. I was actually in Kyle O'Reilly's first ROH match. And I was wrestling Sarah Del Rey, and she was doing what I now know as an Austin Aries move. He does the move as well, and I'd never taken it before, so I took my turnbuckle the way you would, and I did my quarter turn to the right, so you're not staring right at the person who's going to be coming run at you. You know, you're supposed to try to, you know, make it as real as possible and not, you know, a fake dance. So I was always taught old school, turn a quarter to the right, and at the last second open up. That way you're not watching someone come and do something to you and making it very carny. And I had my legs inward because I had already taken it, the turnbuckle. Well, I didn't know that I was supposed to open up the legs to give them an avenue to come in, because I didn't really understand what the move was. So they run and do this rolling upward kick thing, and her whole body went into my knee. And Matt Taven was one of the only people at Gorilla who actually saw what had happened, because I remember I was supposed to be selling my face, because the rolling kick, it comes up to the face, but you see me go and I like go down, and I'm like grabbing my knee because my leg is like stuck. I can't move my leg at all because the cap or whatever was like behind my leg, so I had to wait for that to come all the way back to the front. That was really, really gnarly and rough. Wrestling on a fractured ankle, like 2 weeks after a fractured ankle, was something I did as well for WrestleCon. And I don't recommend it, but I really loved the girls that I was working with in that tag match. And because it was a tag match, I felt like, you know, those women would respect the boundaries of what I knew I could and couldn't do, even though I probably shouldn't have done any of it. You know, just because you can do something and you can handle something doesn't mean you should. Especially when you have a, you know, a high pain tolerance threshold. But that was also pretty stupid. And I've already talked about my concussions on this podcast, but I think I can do a whole video on YouTube if you'd like to hear about the 8 concussions that I had and the worst ones, and so forth. Okay. What is my favorite kind of ice cream? This one's actually pretty fun and easy. Vanilla with rainbow jimmies is my absolute favorite. And yes, they're jimmies, they're not sprinkles. Yeah, so that would definitely be my favorite. Probably my secondary favorite would be like an orange sherbet of some kind, or any sort of sherbet. Again, with rainbow jimmies. Have I ever seen Game of Thrones? I actually had not seen Game of Thrones at all until this year. I started watching it a little earlier this year because when I had surgery, I had a lot of downtime. And I'm still not even finished with it. I think I'm on season 5 or 6. I'm not done yet. So yeah. What is my favorite kind of coffee? I have never actually had a cup of coffee. I've never drank a cup of coffee. I know that's really odd. I know it's weird because I come from the land of Dunkin' Donuts. But yeah, I mean, I think I've tried a latte. I think I've had like a sip of coffee here and there of different kinds of coffees, but I've never actually sat down and had a full cup of coffee ever. Donuts though, I love those. Obviously. I guess not obviously. I guess that's just what mean people say to me. What was my favorite match? I've had a lot of really favorite matches, but I would have to say one of my absolute favorites was working with Mandy Leon. I know that a lot of people think that I hated her, but that actually couldn't be further from the truth. Did I have concerns about things that were going on behind the scenes? Yeah, because there was a lot of stuff that you, the fans, did not know about. And there's a lot of stuff that a lot of people didn't want you guys to know about. But a lot of that didn't have to do with Mandy Leon, and I feel like she was very misunderstood and actually deserves a lot more respect for the stuff that she was pushing for behind the scenes that I think other people got credit for, but it was really her. And I really feel like more people need to put some respect on that. And I say that because I know for a fact that she wasn't doing that for the attention, the clout that people say, and you know, for the shout outs. And that's why I think that she deserves that, is because she wasn't doing that for those things. She was doing it because she genuinely cared about the women's division and women's wrestling and wrestling as a whole. And I really enjoyed that. And, you know, I think maybe at conventions and stuff, I maybe, you know, did too much of like selling our feud. Like there was people that actually thought it was real at WrestleCon. The year I wrestled with Chelsea Green, actually, she was sharing a table with me. And earlier in the day, Allie was sharing a table with me. And they had flip-flopped out. And when Allie was at the table, I had some fans that were ROH fans, and they were getting some of my merch and donating to the charity that I was raising money for at the time. And so I was really hyping up that feud, and like some of them thought it was real. So then they went over and told Mandy that I was talking smack about her and stuff. And it's like, it's a work. Like, it's a work, you know? Like, the acting is part of, you know, the character in the feud. If you can't act, then how are you supposed to sell the tickets and make people actually believe, you know, whatever. But I really enjoyed working that with her. I feel like we were one of the few that actually had like a really, really good feud, and it really gave me an opportunity to show you guys my writing skills with my promos and my acting skills, and slowly developing this character's descent into madness. You know, people like to think I'm a lunatic or whatever. So I kind of used that in that gimmick to kind of show you guys, you know, what a real lunatic actually is. You know, take people's hateful opinions of you and kind of use it against them, you know, sort of thing. Who are some of my favorite opponents? Well, Mandy Leon, Santana Garrett. I love working with her so much. Jordan Grace, she has such a hybrid style that I really, really enjoy working with. Kelly Klein, I really enjoyed working with. We had some really good stuff together. Sumi Sakai, I really, really liked working with her. She was always wanting me to, you know, get more of my stuff in, and she was one of the few wrestlers that actually did that. Like, she liked my style and really always wanted me to do more in my matches and stuff. I really enjoyed that. And there's quite a few other people as well that I really enjoyed working with. I really liked working with Chelsea Green. Giselle Shaw was another one. I think she's very underrated. So yeah. What are some things that wrestlers can do to not go broke? Oh my gosh. You know what? I'm not going to answer that one today. Instead, I'm going to save that for things they don't teach you in school for a segment on the podcast, maybe next week or on my YouTube channel. I actually was thinking of writing a whole book on that, and I think it would be very helpful, even if people don't necessarily want to hear it from me. There's a lot. There is so much that they don't prepare you for and teach you that is so vital to your success, and ultimately, when you don't have that knowledge, contributes to your downfall in life, post wrestling, and even during wrestling. You don't realize how many superstars are actually broke in the business, and it's not even necessarily the ones that are living way outside of their means. It's because there's so much that is involved with being a superstar in this business that they don't teach you as the wrestlers. and they don't educate the fans on. So some people that you think are doing insanely well and they make it look like they are on social media, some of them are just flat out broke. But they're not going to say that because it doesn't look good. So yeah, there's a lot that I could say on that.